Welcome to today's webinar. It is lovely to be with you and to welcome you to today's talk. We are delighted that we are joined by Lauryn Baker from the Royal Star and Garter, and it's lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for being part of this webinar. We're celebrating Marble Hill's revival. £5 million from the National Lottery has been gifted to Marble Hill, to the 66 acres and indeed the beautiful Palladium Villa that sits in the middle. It will see the landscape revived, the house open, free for 5 days a week, the cafe being brought in-house so that you know that every time you have a cup of coffee, you're giving back to the charity, and also lots of events, and this is one of them. So we are really, really delighted to work with partners to be able to share about their charity, about their involvement in Marble Hill, and also to celebrate our community. So just a little bit of background as to how this collaboration came about. Marble Hill and the view from Richmond Hill was saved by an Act of Parliament in 1902 after the Cunard family in 1901 started building roads and sewers and felling trees. And a public outcry came about and a public spirit saved Marble Hill and indeed that very precious view. But the view is well known probably for that fantastic building that sits right at the top and is actually indeed visible from Marble Hill, especially in the winter when there are less leaves on the tree. As part of our commemorations this Remembrance Sunday and indeed across our Armistice, we've been delighted to share on panels an exhibition that our fantastic volunteers have created that shares about Marble Hill and its history and its wartime heritage. And so the volunteers were keen to explore different aspects of that wartime history. And one very important part of that wartime history was our hospitals, whether that be the South African Hospital or indeed the Royal Star and Garter. So it is with real delight that I get the opportunity to introduce you to Lauryn. She's the senior community fundraiser for the Royal Star and Garter charity. And she and Callie have worked really hard with our volunteers to be able to understand a bit more about that heritage, about that amazing building, and also how this fantastic charity has evolved. So we are really delighted to welcome Lauryn, and thank you so much for being part of Marble Hill's revival and supporting our volunteers, but also coming and being part of this public outreach and sharing about this fantastic charity. So it's lovely to welcome you, Lauryn.
Thank you, Rachel. So as Rachel mentioned, my name is Lauryn, and I am the Senior Community Fundraiser for Royal Star and Garter. Our charity provides loving, compassionate care to veterans and their partners living with disability or dementia. So I've been in this role for almost 3 years now, and I've had the honour of supporting and watching the charity as it develops. I've included here on the screen some images which help to portray that development. So I work out with the local communities near to our homes, and this includes churches, schools, groups and associations, corporates, and I also support fundraisers as they take on challenge events for us. So during this talk, I will guide you through our history up to present day and also as we look to the future. So thank you for all joining me on Remembrance Sunday, and there will be an opportunity throughout and also at the end for you to ask any questions. So our history began in 1916. So as World War I raged over Europe, Britain's military hospitals were soon overrun with severely injured sailors and soldiers. In 1915, Queen Mary expressed her concern for the future of the disabled servicemen after their discharge. The Auctioneers and Estate Agents Institute raised the money to buy the derelict Star and Garter Hotel, which you can see pictured on the bottom left of the screen, and presented the deeds to Queen Mary. The Queen asked the British Red Cross Society to convert the former hotel into a permanent haven for paralysed and severely disabled men of the King's forces. An independent charity was set up, and on the 14th of January in 1916, the Star and Garter Home for Disabled Sailors and Soldiers opened its doors. The average age of residents at that time was just 19, and today it is 89. Unfortunately, the building was deemed unfit for purpose, and consequently, when the home opened its doors to the first 10 residents, accommodation was actually provided in the pavilion annex of the old building. On the right here, you can see residents on the terrace of the old hotel back in 1916. While the new home at Richmond was being rebuilt, residents were moved to Enbrook House at Sandgate in Kent, overlooking the English Channel. At Sandgate, they participated in shoemakers' workshops where residents were taught skills such as shoemaking or basket work to keep them motivated and occupied. Residents used motorised chairs, which you can see on the bottom right image, and these were called whiz-bangs, and they used these to get around the Sandgate estate. They were so called this because of the backfiring exhaust sounded like shells exploding in the trenches. The wheelchairs gave residents much coveted independence and were an effective way of tackling the hills that both Richmond and Sandgate sat upon. Motor or no motor, speed was of the essence, even in 1919, when nurse Gladys Lang of the Richmond home wrote in her diary on an outing with a resident, "I took Whiting for a picnic in the park, or rather he took me as he went at a terrific rate in his chair, right down to Kingston Gate and back." It was in October 1924 that the patients, about 40 in number, left Sandgate, the Seaside branch, for their palatial new home at Richmond. The Sandgate home remained open to continue to provide accommodation for residents who benefited from the sea air as well as respite care. This home in Sandgate stayed open until 1940, before all residents moved back to Richmond because of the threat of invasion following the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939. The new home, pictured below in the middle, which some of you may recognise from today, took 5 years to build and was opened by King George V and Queen Mary on the 10th of July 1924, which you will see from the left picture on the screen. The residents were all World War I veterans, and by the end of 1925, we had 175 residents living in the home. In 1950, the Nuffield workshops, which are pictured on the bottom right, were funded by a gift from Lord Nuffield. The purpose of the workshops was to provide training in productive skills such as shoe and clock making as part of the residents' rehabilitation. The Star and Garter magazine that was published in the home in October 1947 reported that the object is to train as many patients as possible to become proficient in handicrafts, so that a percentage will be able to return to their homes. Those who have to remain in the Star and Garter will be able to practice their handicraft in the home workshops. As you look closely on the picture in the middle screen and you can see the top floor, staff actually used to live in the top floor of the home when they used to care for residents. Even though there are no longer any survivors from this time, we are privileged to have records of some of their stories and to share many amazing stories from our current residents who have fought in the Second World War and served since. Take Horace Ham, pictured on the screen, who served in World War I and was later a resident at our old Richmond home. Horace was working in service in a big house in Surrey in 1915 when a recruiting officer asked him and his 4 friends to sign up. A year later, aged just 21, Horace and his battalion, the 16th Middlesex, fought at the Battle of the Somme on the 1st of July 1916. Horace recalled, "I joined up with 4 friends and we stuck together until the Somme. Then, within a few minutes, 2 were dead and 2 of us were injured. Only 1 got through the day unscathed. Only 100 men out of our 800-strong battalion made it back." After recovering from his injuries at the Somme, Horace returned to France, where at the Second Battle of Arras in 1917, his arm was smashed by a bullet. Horace was disabled in the arm and hand for the rest of his life. He also suffered from osteoarthritis in his spine as a result of the time he spent in the trenches, up to his waist in water. When his wife died, Horace could no longer care for himself and expressed huge relief that he could come to the Royal Star and Garter home in Richmond. Our residents' stories remind us of the sacrifices made by our armed forces and the courage and the steadfast determination shown by the older generation, which has safeguarded the freedom we enjoy today. It is the charity's mission to continue to provide excellent therapeutic and nursing care to the military family by being here for generations to come, just as Horace had hoped in his quote. He said, "Star and Garter is my home now, and both residents and staff have become my new family. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. I only hope, just as the home was here for me when I needed it, it will be here in years to come for brave servicemen and women." Pictured here is Nancy, and Nancy Wake came to live at the home in 2003. Nancy fought in the French resistance in the Second World War, helping British soldiers to escape occupied France. She was nicknamed the White Mouse by the Gestapo for her elusiveness. Back in England, she joined the Special Operations Executive and parachuted back into France in 1944 to fight with French resistance fighters against the Nazis. Nancy was one of the most decorated women of the Second World War. In the late 1940s, a paraplegic ward was established by Dr. Ludwig Guttman, founder of Stoke Mandeville Hospital. Guttman used pioneering techniques to get residents playing sport. Believing that sport was vital to their mental well-being, he introduced archery, which you can see pictured here. And this could be played from a wheelchair. In 1948 and 1949, Guttman held the Stoke Mandeville Games with an archery competition between Stoke Mandeville and the Star and Garter team, which the latter won twice. This was the forerunner to the Paralympic Games. Our Richmond home was a beautiful building in a wonderful location not far from Marble Hill. However, as a charity, we wanted to continue to improve our care, meaning that our Richmond home was unfortunately no longer fit for purpose. The home was also not suitable for the dementia care that we wanted to specialise in. We decided the next step was to sell the Richmond home and build 3 new homes. These new facilities would enable us to give exceptional care to ex-servicemen and women in a more suitable and modern environment. And here are our 3 new homes. Our Solihull home was opened in 2008, and our Surbiton home, not far from Richmond, was in 2013. And on a sunny August day, residents left the Richmond home through a lovely balloon arch for their new home in Surbiton. Each resident had a boarding pass along with the door number of their new room. Our newest home on the right is in High Wycombe, and we opened that only a couple of years ago in 2019. Across the 3 homes, we have the capacity to care for 197 residents, 63 in Surbiton, 60 in Solihull, and our largest home in High Wycombe has the capacity to care for 74 residents. Across our 3 homes, we are able to provide specialist dementia care for 86 of our residents. We recently launched our remembrance campaign, and it was titled "Conflict Never Stops, We Won't Stop Caring." Air Vice Marshal Maria Byford, who has served in the RAF since 1991 and is the governor at Royal Star and Garter, said, "As we move further from the last World War, we are now supporting residents who've been engaged in more modern conflict. This has seen them continue to put their lives in danger for the safety of others. They have helped bring peace around the globe and been involved in the crucial work of supporting the recovery and rebuilding of war-torn countries and those affected by natural disasters. Every veteran at Royal Star and Garter and every resident we look after is a part of this country's military family, and we are proud to care for them and share their stories. Jim, pictured on the left, spent 12 years in the Royal Navy, where he principally helped rebuild Caribbean towns, villages, and communities, which were decimated by tropical storms. Later in life, he then helped set up security and nursing systems at Royal Star and Garter's iconic Richmond home. He recalls thinking that it would be a really good place to live, and roughly half a century later, he is very happy to be cared for by the charity. On the right, you will see Stephen. Stephen enlisted into the army in 2006 to build a career and push himself. At just 19, he was wounded by a mortar bomb blast while serving in Basra. He sustained brain injuries, which left him severely disabled. Following rehabilitation, Stephen requested discharge from the army, and in 2017, he moved to Royal Star and Garter to receive round-the-clock care that he both needs and deserves. Recently, Stephen was named winner of the Soldiering On Awards Inspiration category, following a public vote in recognition of his charity fundraising. Stephen undertook a grueling 60-mile virtual London to Brighton cycle ride from his Royal Star and Garter room, and this was during the second lockdown. Despite his injuries leaving him in a wheelchair and using a tablet to support communications, with the help of staff, he completed the challenge. And he did this on his adapted static bike in 6 weeks, raising more than £5,000 for Health for Heroes. Moving forward, we have a vision to help more and more young servicemen and women. There are other veterans with similar circumstances to Stephen who could also benefit from Royal Star and Garter. With Stephen's guidance, we envision providing support for our younger disabled veterans. We are always keen to hear from people who would like to get involved with what we do, whether that be supporting in our homes, at our events when it is safe to do so, or even getting your local networks involved in some fun fundraising or volunteering. I've popped the email onto this screen, so please get in touch with our friendly community team to raise your interest, and they can help you get started if you would like to support what we do. Thank you for taking the time to listen on a day where we commemorate and remember our British forces. If you would like to keep up to date with what is happening in our homes, please visit our website, which I've listed on the screen, starandgarter.org, and you can also follow us on social media, where we post images of key moments in our homes and wider charity activities. Thank you so much, and we will move on to the questions now.
Thank you so much, Lauryn, for sharing so generously about the charity, about how it's changed, and also the history, which is so wonderful and actually kind of shares a lot of our community as part of that. It was lovely to hear some of those amazing stories, which feel very pertinent today. So thank you for coming to be with us. One question to start us off. Obviously, in my introduction, we talked about that Marble Hill view on the top of Richmond Hill and how it was saved by the community. A question around the first picture that you had, and that old hotel, and that transition into becoming the first home that you talk about. It looks quite different because it looks like it's got sort of fenced gating, and obviously there's now a roundabout there. Do you know much more about that building itself?
Yeah, so that was it was a hotel up until the late 1800s, and it looked very, very different to what we have seen on the later pictures, and also what we see present day now. The gates are no longer there, and because the building was deemed unfit for purpose, they had to knock the building down completely and build from ground up.
What we have there now, obviously, sadly, is not the Royal Star and Garter charity, but it's still a very beautiful and iconic and full of history site that is lovely to pass by. Were you in it before the renovations yourself?
So unfortunately not. I joined the charity 3 years ago, but it's lovely to hear the stories about what life was like for residents and staff at the time when we occupied the building. So it's nice to walk past, like many of us, and see what it is now. It still speaks of its history and it still looks just as grand today as what it did back then. It really is iconic.
And it's fantastic to hear about the different purpose-built homes that help you support veterans. Could you tell us more about why those locations were chosen?
Yeah, so the team carry out lots of research into different areas, and what I can do is I can find out exactly what those deciding factors were that led us to go to those specific areas. Sometimes it might be because of the military community that is already present. In High Wycombe, we're not far from the local RAF base, and they are one of our partners that we work closely with, and maintaining links to our military community is something that's really important for our residents to still feel part of that.
Did most of the people who were in Richmond move to Surbiton?
Yeah, so residents, I think I briefly mentioned it in the presentations, the residents moved from Richmond over into the Surbiton home, and it was a really lovely kind of event where they had their room number on their boarding pass and they left. It was a beautiful sunny day, and actually some of the items that were in our Richmond home were brought over into the Surbiton home, and we've got a lovely replica stained glass window in the Surbiton home that we had in the Richmond home. So some of those qualities were moved over into the homes, which is a really lovely thing for residents as well, because they are familiar with them.
And given that they're purpose-built, I bet they're much better for those with additional needs.
Absolutely.
I was really struck, and I know all the volunteers who worked with you for panels were really struck with that kind of fantastic Paralympics link. Can you tell us more about that?
So that's something which, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information on with me today, but that's one of the questions that I can take away with me, and I can follow that up in a document. I can speak to some of our members of the team who have a lot more information on that area, and can provide you with a real comprehensive answer to that one, because it is really fascinating, and you know what, I'd like to learn more about that as well.
I've just got one last question to finish up with. There's a two parts to it, and one of it is how you got involved in the Royal Star and Garter home, and the second part of it is what's your best story about your experiences at the Royal Star and Garter?
So I've always wanted to work for a charity, and I'm very much a people person, and I've always wanted to help make a difference, and there's kind of been a common theme in that throughout kind of my career and also my studies. So when I saw the advertisement to be part of the Royal Star and Garter, I was just immediately attracted to it and its values as well. It really held strong with me. We very much live and work as a family, and that extends to our community, and I think that's really important. It's a lovely charity to work for, and I knew they say you have a feeling when you walk into a place that you feel at home, and it's crazy because I was going into our administration office, so it wasn't one of the homes, but even there I felt at home because of how welcoming everyone is, and that's just a really nice that kind of that speaks volumes from our homes into kind of our admin office as well. So yeah, that was the kind of the first part. And I guess one thing that has really stood out for me is the model of care that residents receive at our homes, which is based on the butterfly model. And it's really moving away from the task-based care, where, it's kind of a timetabled day. You have breakfast at a certain time, you then play games at a certain time. It's more about putting yourself in the shoes of the resident. And something that really stood out for me was when one of the nurses said to me, I put my pajamas on with the resident when they go to bed, because I'm in their home, and if I'm there in my daytime clothes and I'm helping that resident to get to bed who's living with dementia, that could be really confusing for them, because they think, why do I need to put my pajamas on when you're looking like you're just about to go out to the shops? So it's a really interesting insight into, how care is given based on the feelings, and putting yourself in their shoes.
I think it's wonderful and really heartwarming to hear that level of care that's being given, particularly to those who've given so much. Before I say a huge thank you, just to, at the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Lauryn, for your generosity and sharing about the Royal Star and Garter. Thank you for all you're doing for our veterans. And it's been a real pleasure to work with you and Callie as part of the exhibition. And I do implore everybody to have an opportunity, if you have an opportunity, to go to Marble Hill and see that exhibition that has been created by our volunteers with the support of Lauryn and Callie at the Royal Star and Garter charity. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.